Welcome to Duluth Junction Workshop. If you've been following along with the Sonett project, you know that I already removed the old trunk floor that was super rusty, and now I'm going to try to install a new one. I had this green strip paint remover that's supposed to take off the paint that's already in the bottom there so I can get it all prepped up and ready for setting those new panels in.
That is wet now, so my butt's gonna be wet. Woo woo. Planning on painting generally up to here, so I want to make sure everything below that is good. To get this brace off the bottom part, I need to pull the latch out of the fiberglass, and unfortunately these two tiny little screws, one there and one under here, that screw into the fiberglass are just spinning and they're not coming out. So I'm gonna have to take a Dremel, I think, and remove those before I can get the brace out, restore the brace, and get that all painted up. Got that off of there. Nice piece of vinyl stuck in there. Lovely. And the bonus is there's a little piece of metal in there. Can you see that? Piece of rusty metal fiberglassed into the car. So I assume the screws are screwed into the metal and they're spinning inside the rusted piece of crap metal. That's fun. So I realized when cleaning this off that there was, despite my best efforts, there was a little bit of surface rust coming through in here. I'm going to take a wire wheel and an angle grinder and see if I can clean that up again. I'm going to try to get the rust out and make sure I can convert that and get it all done relatively quickly now instead of letting it sit.
And what are you putting on after you get the paint off?
I don't even know right now. Hold up there. I've been doing things different ways that I shouldn't, and I think it was time to take a step back and just say, kind of, what do I really want this project to look like? Unfortunately, I have been trying to save a little bit of money on the rust converter side. Tried to go with a few different products, crud cutter, rust fix, and another paint stripper that I found in the cabinet. And I'm just not comfortable using them with Pour 15. It's kind of a little bit of a high stakes project because I am doing a piece of my car and I don't want it to rust up again later. So what I did was I just decided I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna do the proper products for Pour 15 and I'm gonna go from there. So what their system does is, first I have the cleaner degreaser. I'm gonna put this on first and follow all the instructions. Basically, you just dilute this with hot water, 4 parts water to 1 part degreaser, and you wash your stuff off. And then you take the metal prep, which I picked up, and this is a rust remover, so it removes any surface rust on the part, and then it improves welding connectivity so you can weld through it, and it coats, after it removes the rust, it coats your surface with zinc phosphate, it says. So it creates a base of adhesion for Pour 15. So essentially it's like a rust converter and etching primer in one. From there you go to the regular Pour 15, and this, of course, you just apply over that, and this is an undercoat. If it's going to be hit by UV rays, you want to paint actual paint over it, but this is supposed to be kind of like a hard seal against rust. So now that I've found the actual metal prep, I can put my mind at ease a little bit. I've never done a metalwork project before, so I'm gonna go forward with these products and we'll see how that works. I think it'll make me a little more comfortable with the process that I'm going through and make it a little bit easier to finish this project up and get the car on the road. It's 50 degrees out, and I think it's kind of stupid that I'm not driving it. I've got the cleaner degreaser, 4 parts hot water to 1 part cleaner degreaser, and I've got a little paintbrush here, so let's get applying.
Alright, it's all on here, kind of soapy looking. Next step is to take some water and rinse it off. Getting kind of wet in here. I do see a little piece of seam sealer that's coming up on the edge here, so I'm going to try to take that out. Because of course I'm going to be seam sealing again after I do stuff. Does appear to have been hiding some corrosion in there, so good, get it out. On the driver's side, I actually got a lot of seam sealer out of here. Got the hole exposed in the back here between the two panels. And this is a lot of surface rust, so I'm really glad I took this out. I got the pieces of rust cleaned up with a wire brush, and now it's time to put the metal prep on. So I've got a little sour cream bin, jar, what do you call this, tub? And this stuff is super nasty, so I guess you're supposed to wear gloves and everything, which is good because I am wearing gloves. It says just to kind of brush it on, and if you have bare surfaces, bare metal, then you're supposed to keep it wet for 20 minutes. If it's below 70 degrees Fahrenheit, it also dries slower, so you want to make sure that you're giving it enough time. It's about 52 Fahrenheit in here right now, so I'm going to try to maybe do like half an hour and get all this stuff prepped up. On the Sonett 2 and V4, there's no hatch here. There's just a door behind the license plate. So if any of you have done this on a second gen Sonett, let me know how that went. I imagine there's a lot of leaning involved. I'm so excited to drive the car without a giant hole in the floor. Okay, I got the front of the trunk metal prepped, so it looks pretty much like everything else. It looks like at a certain point it gets a white or a light yellowish coating, which I think is the zinc coming out. So I wanted to take the piece of metal I'm going to use for the front, which I've done a little weld through primer on already, and set it in and see how it looks. Hey, just a quick break. If you haven't subscribed, go check it out. I got the Sonett here. I've been working on some engine stuff as well as the body work. I've got the 62 Ford F600, which I actually pulled out of a farm field kind of, and got that running again. And then behind me here is my 2001 Honda Insight, which is also pretty fun to deal with. Pretty fun to drive. I have a 65 Ford F100 in the barn that I have some work to do on this summer, and I'm hoping to drive this F600 at some point as well. That's got a 262 inline 6 and a 4-speed. So pop that button down there, that subscribe button, and you'll see all the new stuff that I'm doing. Now this is a piece of sheet metal with 3 flanges. So 2 on the sides, 1 on the front. They're about 2 inches deep, and they're currently facing downward. This is supposed to be 6 inches down from the center section, or the, what do you call this, axle bar. That's 6 inches, that works. I should say it's at the right height. And then from this line down is 8.5 inches, so that's about right as well. This is gonna go up in the front of that area up there, and I've drilled a bunch of 1/8 inch holes in the flanges, and these are cut out so they go around the indents. Done a little bit of practice with the welder, and it's not perfect, but it's a good start and it holds. I'm gonna start with stuff like this and kind of fill in until it's kind of flush up. Then I can knock it down with a grinder. My dad picked up this welder to work on the truck, and it's a MiG 180 from Emeco. I can dial it in a little bit better than the Harbor Freight welder, so I'm gonna, when this is dry, I'm gonna clamp it in there and get going on tacking that in. Let's give it a shot. This is my first time doing any sheet metal bodywork, so this is interesting for me. A wise man once said, "It's better done than perfect." I think that's what I've got here. I've got some welds that to me look pretty decent, you know, halfway passable. But then I also have some garbage, so I'm just, you know, I think the garbage is attached well enough that it won't be an issue. And I surely have enough little spots on here that it's not going anywhere. Oh gosh. All right, we got the front portion bent up to accept the longer portion from the rear. Oof. That's the sound of the working on the chain. Gang. That's the sound of the man working on the chain. Gang. I think the men of the chain gang worked harder than that. Alright. Please hold a moment of silence for our pollinating friend who died in the service of our food system. Alright, I got the holes drilled in the flanges on the replacement panel for the front of the trunk and set it in the trunk here. Let me show you. So it's lined up with a bunch of holes about an inch apart up on the flange I just put in, and then underneath we have the lower flanges held in by these nice sheet metal vice grips. So I'm gonna go in and do a couple zaps on here and we'll check back in. Get the true view. All right. So this was a little bit further, the pieces were further away than I would like on the edges there. But I think I got a lot of good plug welds in here. Let's check the bottom. So we can see a little bit of penetration on a lot of them actually. Not as many as I'd like and not as much as I'd like, but I think that'll be okay. I'll probably do some seam welding on the bottom here very carefully. Pretty happy with how it's going for my first sheet metal work ever. Obviously it's not perfect, but I'm gonna get a trunk in here, and like I said, I'm gonna drive the car again. So we'll work on that and get back. I'm getting a little bit better results now by aiming slightly toward the lower end of the joint, and that means that it biases the flux basically toward the bottom. And if you hit it too high, it ends up burning through the top layer and not really connecting to the bottom. So learning a lot, and I'm starting to get better welds. Like this is a little bit better weld here than something like this that just burned through the top. All right, I've successfully welded my gloves to the car. But I got the bottom done, or pretty well done. I got some welds in there. So I did a zigzag pattern, and then I did some half-hearted seam welding across the top and the other side. These came out a little bit messier. Let's give it a little brush. I'm not sure what the deal was, but I kept blowing through on this area. Let's see on the back side. It's really hard to tell on the back side because of the old undercoating, but it looks like it's burned a lot off, so that means that I'm getting heat through. That concludes the front section. The next thing I'm going to do is set some L brackets up here on both sides, and those will allow me to set the corrugated section on top. The corrugated section does need to meet up to the back apron, and since it's corrugated, I can't just butt it in. The original trunk floor was corrugated that went down to a flat part at the back, and then it was spot welded to the bottom of that. So let me show you what I'm thinking about for this. So what I'm trying to do is flatten out the corrugations here. So I tacked down the lower parts, then I cut slits, and I bent down the tops of those. So the idea is to tack those down, and then I can run up and fill those in a little bit. I'm having a little bit better luck with these gaps, and my trick that I've figured out is to put the wire right between the pieces of metal, right in the middle of the gap, and that means that the spark basically jumps from one side to the other simultaneously, or like from the middle out, and that creates a nice little dab. On the back side of what I just did, this looks like a lot better penetration than I had with these original welds. That's due to technique. Well, hello, Nikki. Hey, Nick. How you doing? Oh, hello. Are you the welding mascot today? Yeah? So the technique that I was using before was I was starting the weld on the lower side and then kind of moving up a little bit, which kind of worked, but I think the better solution is just to hold the wire just barely above the surface on the lower portion and not move it. And if I just hold that trigger down just for like a second, it will fill in a little pool and go up enough into the upper portion to put those together. So that's what I was using for a lot of these, and I think that it works a lot better. This is actually going to be on the bottom of that piece, but it fits in pretty well, it looks like. I got to check that that's not overlapping too much. I might have to take a 1/4 inch off, but it looks pretty good to me, and I think it'll hold quite a bit of weight. So tomorrow I'll come in here and I'll make sure that's trimmed properly on that end, and then with this sitting kind of where it's going to be with this thing on the bottom and everything, I will set these in, clamp them in, and make sure that they get welded in properly first. I decided to lay a couple things in and see if everything fits before I go and weld it. And we have a slight issue. Let me show you. So we have our battery here, which is obviously in its final position, and a spare tire. And this is supposed to all fit in here. Here's a straight edge going over the tire, and that's about 1 mil away from the tire, so I can't move the tire back any further. Well, dear gosh, I threw a 155 in, and look at that. She fits. So, doesn't fit if I push it all the way to the back. I mean, seriously, Saab? If I push that all the way back, the tire is too fat, so I gotta keep it forward a little bit. That's okay. The factory jack is over there, so I do have enough room for that, and the battery is there, and I can have everything in without everything touching each other all the time, which is great. And the parcel shelf will fit. I think it's time to make final adjustments, drill some holes, and get this thing welded in. Let's take a look at the bolts I got from McMaster Carr. These are stainless versions of the bolts that were in the car. So I'm looking to make them rust-proof. Here we go. So I marked out the 6 bolt holes that go under the apron area, so I can drill those out when I know the right size for the drill bit, and then I can bolt this up as a mock installation and install the L brackets on the sides. So I do have extras in case anyone needs them. Let me know in the comments, and I can get some out to you, because the minimum quantity was like 25 or 50 on most of these, and I don't need that many, obviously. The first problem I'm seeing is that now that these middle ones are lower, now the sides are not lining up with the bottom here. So what I might need to do is I'm going to have to flatten it out. Instead of seam welding the whole end down, I did put this sacrificial piece behind it, and I tacked everything down and then welded down the seams. So now I'm going to cut these tack welds off, pull the sacrificial piece off, and this end will be straight enough to tack in to seam weld into the car directly. A little bit of work on the front end can save a lot of work on the back end. I guess I went a little overboard with the Harbor Freight Zippy Zap, but nice and smooth now. I think I ran out of time tonight. It's getting close to midnight, and so I'll shelve this for tomorrow and finish it up later. I got the welds on the trunk floor area cleaned up again, and then I did the metal prep again on it just to make sure it was all good. So I've got it bolted down in the back. These two are, the middle ones are tightened down. The other ones are a little bit loose. And I've got the battery on to hold it down to the front piece up here. So what I'm gonna do is just tack a couple places in here with the welder so it stays in place. And these are tightened up so it stays in place. Then I'm going to go underneath and position those angles. Are batteries flammable? Those look like garbage. Well done. I got the angles in here, and I actually overlapped it inside underneath the front section, and then I can tack them all together. That's because it was just slightly too long on the back, but I figured it'll be good to have them all tacked together in one piece. I think they're looking really good overall. I got a couple holes to fill. These are definitely a huge improvement over my first set from the other one. I consider that just about seam welded. Just about. Let's hop up upstairs and go on the top side of this. Well, there's my front seam. The passenger side was a little rough. Those parts were pretty far away, but I tried to get a little tack there. Driver's side was a lot better, but again, that very edge was a little bit hard to do. Around on the back edge, I did some tacks between the bolts. I think you remember this area was rusty before, and I had to take that down, so I tried to build it back up again as best I could, get some metal in there. But otherwise, I think it cleaned up pretty well and tacked up pretty well. Underneath, we got the seam welded down the side, seam welded on the back, and then seam welded down the other side. We got a bunch of tacks on both flanges, so even though some of them are garbage, the rest should be good.
Ironically, it seems like the waiting and agonizing over starting this project was more difficult than it actually was to do the whole project. Once I got the metal prepped in, it was literally less than one workday of actual welding, I think, and it went together pretty well. I did have a couple unforeseen things happen, but got them ironed out pretty well. And for the condition of the kit when I got it, and when I got it, I didn't know how to weld. I'm really happy with the results, and I think that the trunk is overall stronger than when it came out of the factory. So big win there. Would have cost me several hundred more dollars at the minimum to get the proper trunk kit for it. As far as doing a project where you don't know how to do anything, you don't have the skills, and it's either time or money, right? So I chose to spend a lot of time and not a lot of money. I know some people, you have a shop do it because you have more money than time. It's all a trade-off, and just jump in and make it happen, because the only thing worse than doing a project badly is not doing it at all. That's kind of the mantra of this video. It's better done than perfect. It is done. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I have a lot more work to do. Keep an eye out. I'm trying to get this thing to a show on the 22nd, and it's supposed to be some really cool, rare, obscure import cars there. So I'm really excited to hopefully get this there and get some video for you all to go and watch. So I appreciate your support. Go hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and thank you for watching Duluth Junction Workshop.